I always felt responsible for World War I. I wanted something exciting to happen.
This is Lenore McDowell, a World War I nurse, artist, and my grandmother. I called her Nanny. I was always proud of what a strong and independent woman she was. She would always tell me to follow your heart. Nanny did just that. In 1916, the Army Medical Corps began working with hospitals and universities throughout the country. Medical personnel of all kinds volunteered for these units, knowing they may be mobilized in the event of a war. On April 6, 1917, the U.S. formally entered World War I, and Nanny along with it. She took the oath of allegiance and was sworn in with 60 other nurses. The country's sense of patriotism was unwavering. But nothing could have prepared her for what she would witness in the coming years. Nanny, when did the idea of becoming a nurse first take hold?
I had to have an emergency appendectomy at 14. For 6 weeks, I was tended to by Clara Goodwin, a graduate nurse from New Haven Hospital. I realized right then and there that that's what I wanted to do.
Nanny would never forget Nurse Goodwin. And in 1914, with war breaking out in Europe, Nanny enrolled in a 3-year nursing program. The work was relentless. Along with nursing duties, they carried trays, served food, cleaned bedpans, and counted linen. In 1917, with Germany's continued attacks on U.S. passenger and merchant ships, the U.S. declared war. 2 days after graduation, Nanny was sent to Camp Wadsworth in Spartanburg, South Carolina.
For many of the boys, the war started that winter. They came from small towns. Some of them never even been 5 miles from home. The camp was a breeding ground for measles, mumps, and pneumonia. And then an epidemic of spinal meningitis broke out. It was awful. So many boys died before they had the chance to really live.
It must have been difficult to separate your personal feelings from duty.
I only fell in love twice in my life. Your grandfather, of course, but the first time was in that camp hospital. It was the last thing I expected to happen.
It was the first time Nanny ever mentioned Sergeant Theodore Daniels, a member of the 369th, the first all-black regiment known as the Harlem Hellfighters.
I can't explain how I felt. It was as if I had known him all my life. He was only in the hospital for 2 weeks, but in that short time, I felt something I'd never felt before. It was overwhelming. Like many of the boys, Theo contracted pneumonia. He never complained, and he spent most of his recovery drawing on his Army-issued French-American translation book. He was open, empathetic, and always asked if I was okay. I found myself making excuses to be by his bed all the time, trying not to be too obvious. We went on and on about our love of drawing and horses and horseback riding. Outside the hospital, nurses were not allowed to fraternize with the enlisted men, nor they with us, let alone a white nurse and a black soldier. It all seems so stupid.
Once Theodore was deemed fit for duty, he rejoined his unit. Then he and the Hellfighters were sent back to New York, then overseas.
I was crushed. I thought I would never see him again. I couldn't stop thinking about him. I needed distraction. After all, I was young, and none of us nurses lacked escorts to town. Dinners out and dancing. I dare say Mother and Father may have disapproved of the dancing. But I know they would have disapproved of Theo.
In April of 1918, Nanny and 2 others from the camp were selected for overseas duty. They headed to New York, where they drilled in Central Park on all things military for 3 weeks. The day arrived. A convoy of 16 ships was to make way for England. Nanny's ship tightly packed 6,000 boys and 600 nurses below its decks.
Off the coast of Ireland, our convoy was attacked by a submarine. Planes dropped bombs, the ship's guns erupted. It was deafening. The sight of land did little to calm our nerves. All we could do was sit there, wait it out, and hope.
Nanny and some of the nurses were quickly moved to the countryside, where an orphanage had been transformed into a hospital.
It was beautiful there, and you could almost forget there was a war going on until you walked into the building. The rooms were filled with boys, beaten and broken. It was a painful reminder of what was happening in France. At night, we could hear guns from across the channel. I prayed for Theo's safety and worked round the clock.
The war was taking its toll on England. Food rations got less and less, but the English never complained.
One night at dinner, I looked down at my plate. It was the same curried eggs. I burst into tears and cried, "I can't eat this stuff anymore." The head sister asked the waitress if she would bring me something else, so she came, took my plate, put another plate with 2 tiny sardines. I started laughing and crying. The tears were hunger and relief. A letter from Theo had somehow gotten through to me. He was safe for now, right across the channel.
2 weeks later, with fighting becoming more intense, Nanny's unit was to be shipped to France and closer to the front lines. World War I saw 6,000 soldiers a day slaughtered, the equivalent of every man on her transport ship.
We were not prepared for the sight of men straight off the battlefield. To see fresh wounds and hear the screams of those cut down by gunfire, shrapnel, or gas. The boys put on brave faces, but we could see the fear and anguish in their eyes. They gave us their insignia in thanks, maybe so they wouldn't be forgotten.
One night, Nanny was writing a letter in hopes it would find Theodore when a knock came on the door.
It was Theo. I ran to him. I threw my arms around him. He just held me. It seemed so natural. We just held each other. He and the 369th had been moved to our sector to fortify the lines. He looked so tired and somehow older. Theo held my face, smiled, and told me to meet him later that night at the stables. One of Theo's men was on guard duty at the stables. He waved me on, then opened one of the stable doors. Inside, Theo stood with 2 beautiful horses. We took off into the darkness. It was the first fun I had experienced since leaving the States. We got back to the stable, and we spent the rest of the night in each other's arms. And for a few hours, we forgot about the war. I made it back to my hut by sunrise. That morning at breakfast, I was ordered to report to headquarters.
Someone had seen them, recognized Nanny, and reported her. She was questioned, but would not reveal who the other rider was. She was reprimanded and confined to quarters. Theo had been sent back to the front. Were you able to see each other again?
Not until the armistice. I was being transferred to Nice to care for the wounded there. The Paris train station was going mad. Crowds were everywhere, and women were grabbing and kissing the American soldiers. Boarding the train, I heard my name. I turned to see Theo, head bandaged, his arm in a sling, pushing his way through the crowd. I ran to him. I couldn't hold back my tears. We hugged and kissed each other just like everyone else. No one noticed. No one cared. He handed me a small package. I kissed him one last time and boarded the train. I watched Theo disappear into the crowd as the train moved farther and farther and farther away. I opened the package to find Theo's translation book filled with sketches of his time over there and a medal. But it wasn't until I got home that I found out what it was all about. It was in all the papers. Sergeant Theodore Daniels, cited 3 times on the field of battle. Sergeant Daniels fought off a German raid in hand-to-hand combat, killing multiple Germans and rescuing 4 other soldiers while receiving 11 wounds. The French awarded Sergeant Daniels the Croix de Guerre with Star and Bronze Palm, the first United States soldier in World War I to receive this honor.
What happened?
We planned to reunite once back in the States, but I never saw him again. He made it home, only to be killed that summer of 19 in the New York race riots. Red Summer. It was sparked by a series of violent attacks on Black communities. It was later learned that Theo had come to the aid of a white man who was being attacked by a group of Black teens. He intervened and chased them away. A man rolled over and saw a Black man kneeling over him, Theo, and he started to yell for help. Another group of whites came running over. One of them pulled out a gun. By the time the man on the ground realized that Theo had helped him, it was too late.